Hey everyone, in front of you, you have an image of the American short story novelist Tobias Wolff. And today we're going to discuss his short story, Bullet in the Brain. And I want to go over the summary for you to have a better understanding of the story. We have Anders as our main character, and he's going to the bank right before it closes. And he gets stuck in line behind two women who are having an argument, or not an argument, a stupid conversation, as he refers to it. And this puts him in a bad mood. Bad moods are not unusual for our main character of Anders. He's a quick-tempered book critic, and right off the bat, the author sets us up to see that Anders' personality is framed by his dislike of others and his bad temper. It's not standing in line that annoys him. He's enraged by the conversations he overhears. As the story moves on, we have one of the bank tellers, despite the long line, closes her window early. The two women in front of Anders disapprove and turn to Anders to get his views. Although he does feel a sense of a towering hatred for the teller, he does not agree with the woman. He makes fun of them. The women think that he's going to agree with them as they're suffering from waiting longer, but he doesn't feel similar. He isolates himself from others, and it makes him lash out there in them at a time that he might be expected to be sympathetic. So shortly after, the bank goes silent because two masked men walk in. One of them has a gun pressed against the bank guard's head, and they tell everyone you have to stay silent or they're going to kill them. Anders, however, cannot stay silent. He makes a sarcastic comment to the woman he criticized earlier. Anders is so jaded by his life and by criticizing others that he's more willing to critique the robber's language than stay safely silent. So one bank robber comments on the closed position and asks about the person who works in that spot. The bank teller who closed the window says it's hers, and the robber threatens her personally. Anders finds poetic justice in the situation and jokes with the two women that now justice is done. He has no concern for this woman who has been singled out by an armed criminal. Instead, he's saying she got what she deserved for closing her window. So this comment gets one robber's attention, and he calls Anders a bright boy and asking him if he told Anders to talk. Anders makes another sarcastic comment, saying the nickname is copied from a story by Ernest Hemingway. The robber then holds the pistol to Anders' stomach in warning. Anders has no problem being amused, laughing, making sarcastic comments at a time of danger, which is an important part of the story. As it goes on, the pistol is up against Anders, and he's trying not to laugh. So even with a gun pointed directly at him, he has to fight back laughter. He ends up looking the robber in the eyes, and he sees how red and raw looking his eyes are. And for the first time, Anders begins to feel a sense of unease. When Anders looks at the eyes, it makes a connection. The robber is unnerved by Anders' stare. So the robber uses the pistol and tilts Anders' head up to look at the ceiling, and then Anders starts to analyze and criticize the ceiling. He sees connections in this mural on it. He cannot stop being a critic. His job is a critic, and everything in life he now criticizes. His job has overtaken him. The robber, seeing his expression, asks Anders if he thinks that the robber is comical. Anders says no, but the robber keeps questioning him, saying, "Do you think I'm some type of clown?" And threatens Anders, saying that if he continues to mess around, he's history. Despite the danger he's in, though, Anders is more focused on the ceiling, his disdain for the art, the robber uses this cliched word, capiche, which comes from gangster movies. And he's trying to intimidate Anders. But it makes Anders laugh. And because he laughs at that, he gets shot in the head. And then we read about this bullet that's traveling through Anders' brain and basically his process of death. During this time, Anders starts to remember people from his life that once mattered to him. A past girlfriend, his wife. Both of those women did end up irritating him. Instead of having a cherished loved one, he remembers how irritated he was by them. As the bullet continues, he goes kind of into his youth. He remembers college professors, novels from classmates. And then he finally gets to a scene of being a child when he was playing baseball in the summer. And he remembers arguing about who a better player was, Mickey Mantle or Willie Mays. And we see a huge contrast as he goes back in time, because in his childhood, he was joyful, he was happy. And that contrasts dramatically with the person he's become. He remembers his cousins being at the game. He remembers what positions people wanted to play. He also remembers the grammatical errors they made when they were talking. And he asked his cousin, Coyle's cousin, to repeat words that he was saying when he was saying, they is the best position. And Anders is so intrigued by his mispronunciation that he wants Coyle's cousin to repeat it again. And he realizes, however, that asking him to repeat it would make him look like a jerk to the other boys. So he doesn't say anything. As a child, he doesn't ask for the repeating of the word. As an adult, we can see he would handle that situation much differently. He can't quite let it go. He repeats it to himself as he runs out to the field. But while this memory is playing out, we have the bullet going through his brain. He's getting closer and closer to death. And his childhood baseball game gives him that time to relive happier past and kind of realize what he's been doing wrong. And he kind of passes away with that "they is" going through his mind. Before the bullet exits his skull, he has time to get lost in a memory. And he can remember a time when language was intriguing and provoked questions and wonder, not contempt. Unfortunately, that's what it took to kind of bring him back. So that's your summary of the story. I will leave it up to you how you interpret it, but when you think of themes, think of being cynical versus respect. Think of nostalgia and innocence, and just kind of the power of language in general. Thank you, everyone.